PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub Recap, where we break down every single game in the 2024-2025 season, the Vegas Golden Knights headed over to Seattle to play at the Climate Pledge Arena. And this was an interesting back and forth matchup. There were some positives. There was a few negatives. And then at the end of the day, unfortunately for the Vegas Golden Knights, an overtime loss here in Seattle. And we're going to cover all of that here on our 20-minute recap show that we do on every single Vegas Golden Knights game on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. Very quickly, go to that website, www.prconnectionsradio. Over a dozen shows on the platform, including Vegas Hockey Hub. So I recommend checking all of that. Go to our social media pages at Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you want to follow your host, I'm also on all major platforms at IANJRACHIELE. That's Ian J. Rachiele on all social media platforms. So in this matchup that we're looking at, Golden Knights and the Seattle Kraken, over the last couple of seasons, there has actually been some really interesting back and forth games with the Golden Knights and the Seattle Kraken. And even though it is a divisional matchup of sorts, this has been a newer type of thing. You have the two newest teams in the NHL, Seattle the newest, Vegas Golden Knights second newest out of everybody in the NHL. So we're going to be covering everything here on this episode. The roster moves, this is the biggest one that we're going to be covering. Your captain, forward Mark Stone, is out. Now, according to Bruce Cassidy, he is listed as day-to-day with a lower body injury. We could trace all of this back to not the last game, but the game previously when Mark Stone, Edmonton Oilers, that game that ended up happening. And, when you really sit here and analyze what this injury could be, lower body is such a vague term. Lower body could be a groin injury, it could be an ankle injury, it could be a knee injury, it could be a foot injury. This is actually one of my biggest problems with hockey in general, is that a lower body injury is such a vague concept of what an injury could be. Now, I always acknowledge and I always give credit where credit is due. Shout out to Sin Bin Vegas for the clip. Sin Bin Vegas went back and uploaded the clip of the final play in that game against Edmonton. And when Mark Stone is skating down the ice, he does get clipped by Connor McDavid. And it does seem like the stick did connect in the lower body region of Mark Stone. So, using context and looking at all the visual cues, you can make a very safe assessment that when Mark Stone got injured, it was on that exact play when Connor McDavid, winged his stick and it hit Mark Stone somewhere in the lower body. Mark Stone had some pain on his face, and when it actually looks at what happened afterwards, this is the same Mark Stone that's not going to be in the lineup for Seattle. We don't know when he is going to be out. Currently listed as day-to-day. So here on Vegas Hockey Hub Recap, we're actually going to be kind of focusing and keeping an eye on the Mark Stone situation. And, him being off the first line in this game, you actually got to see somebody new on the first line. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit when we go over the starting lineup. But with Mark Stone being out, you got to see someone who's really, comfortable on the first line last year make his return back to the top line for the Vegas Golden Knights. And the other announcement on the injury front, yes, Mark Stone is the biggest deal when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, not just the captain of this team, but one of the best members statistically on this year. This is a guy, Mark Stone, who is averaging over a point per game in the first dozen games of the year. Is also someone who's a leader in the locker room, the captain, kind of the voice of reason here at the Vegas Golden Knights. But defenseman Nicholas Hague was put on IR. So Nicholas Hague, he suffered an injury a while ago. It seemed like, they were trying not to put him on IR, but indeed he has been designated over to the injured reserve, and that does open up the defense. So Ben Hutton, he is in the starting lineup alongside Zach Whitecloud on the defensive pairing. Kaden Korzak, he is still your 7th defenseman at this point in time. All it did was take Nicholas Hague, take him out of the lineup, and now you have just 7 defensemen for the Vegas Golden Knights as of currently this date. So for Nicholas Hague, curious to see when he does come back to the organization. He has had a steady first dozen games of the year for the Vegas Golden Knights. And for Nicholas Hague, someone who has kind of been developed and really progressed over the last year and a half with your Vegas Golden Knights, his especially is pairing with Trangelo and Hannafin. So that wasn't just the only roster move that happened in this, as you would have a recall from Henderson. So the super replacement, or as I like to call the guy who is not good enough to be an everyday starter in the NHL, but someone who's good enough to not be an everyday starter in the AHL, Jonas Roundbeer, he has been recalled from the Henderson Silver Knights, and he would actually be on the 4th line tonight for the Vegas Golden Knights. So, clearly this was done because of Mark Stone. So because of Mark Stone's injury, him being day-to-day, you had to call somebody up from the Henderson Silver Knights. Now, my only injection would be this. Brendan Brisson really must have done something wrong to the Vegas Golden Knights organization. This is a former first-round pick. This is a guy who spent a few first couple of games being with the Golden Knights. They send him down to the AHL. That's fine. Okay, it happens. But you call up Roundbeer over Brisson. And unfortunately, I don't know when we're going to see Brendan Brisson be back. I don't know how many injuries we're going to accumulate throughout the year. But when it comes to Brendan Brisson, the fact that he wasn't the first call-up immediately after Mark Stone gets injured, something tells me in my gut that Brendan Brisson, it could be something behind the scenes, behind closed doors, with Kelly McCrimmon, with George McPhee, with Bill Foley, with Bruce Cassidy. But the fact that Brendan Brisson was not the immediate call-up, and it was actually Jonas Roundbeer, tells me 2 aspects of it. Either A, they trust Roundbeer so much that he has essentially become their super replacement and the guy they trust to get called up on a last-minute notice, or something really happened with Brisson, and he is just not trusted enough by the Vegas Golden Knights to be an NHL caliber player in this organization. And unfortunately, I'm going to lean towards the latter. Hopefully I am wrong. Your host, Ian Rachiele, that's right. I want to be wrong about it. But just very questionable when we heard that announcement that Jonas Roundbeer would be the guy called up from Henderson. I mean, last year we saw Gregory Diancinco. He was called up for a little bit. We even saw Mason Morelli last year. He made his debut. He played a few games last year. So when it comes to the Henderson Silver Knights, Jonas Roundbeer being called up, that's not necessarily the problem. I think Roundbeer is someone who, is kind of in an interesting spot with the Golden Knights. Like I mentioned, not good enough to be an everyday NHLer, but too good to be an everyday player in the AHL. And the goaltender situation for this game, Adin Hill in net for the Vegas Golden Knights. Past few outings have been pretty solid for Adin Hill, so he got the nod in this game for Vegas. And, it's about 2 months away, but I do want to briefly mention that the 4-nation face-off tournament where you have Team USA, Team Canada, Team Sweden, and Team Finland, Adin Hill is under consideration for Team Canada. Now, granted, there's about 7 or 8 goaltenders that are in the mix right now for consideration for Team Canada, but with Adin Hill performing the way he has the last couple of games, it does make you wonder how much of that Team Canada nomination is in the background and kind of, in his mental. Because if you perform really well, Team Canada is going to notice. But yeah, Adin Hill in net for the Golden Knights against Seattle. Now, getting into the starting lineup for your Vegas Golden Knights, On line one, you have the tandem of Ivan Barbashev and Jack Eichel, one of the best line mates that we have seen in all of the NHL in 24-25. And then I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but this past season, when Jack Eichel got hurt, Nicholas Waugh was on the first line for a little bit with Barbashev and Marchessault. Well, with Mark Stone being out, welcome back to the first line, Nicholas Waugh. He will be with Barbashev and with Eichel in this game. And we actually see some of that productivity on the first line in this game. We'll cover all of that in a few minutes. Then line two, we have Brett Howden, Tomas Hertl, and Pavel Dorofeyev. Brett Howden and Dorofeyev have done exceptionally well in this season. And then on the power play, Tomas Hertl has done a really exceptional job on the power play. Forward line three, Tanner Pearson, William Karlsson, and Alexander Holtz. Pearson really doing good so far this season. William Karlsson, ever since coming back from injury, we have seen his production. And Alexander Holtz really still trying to find himself as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. And then after being recalled from the Henderson Silver Knights, Jonas Raumbier alongside Cole Schwindt and Keegan Kolazar on that fourth line. And then on the defensive pairings, you have Noah Hannafin and Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore and Braden McNabb, Ben Hutton, Zach Whitecloud. So, the forward lines, we're seeing a big difference there. Ben Hutton, obviously, being the replacement for Nicholas Hague while he is on IR. Whitecloud and Hutton, we have seen a combination of that over the last couple of years. But really the forwards was the big change in the lineup heading into Seattle with Adin Hill being in the goaltend there. So looking at what we saw here early on in this game, it did have about 5 minutes in. Brett Howden, he caught a penalty. He would go to the penalty box in the Vegas Golden Knights situation there. And, Brett Howden going to the box. And then you had a 2-for-1 special in terms of penalties where the Seattle Kraken, there was a high sticking and a tripping penalty on Jack Eichel on the exact same play. So two Seattle Kraken players go to the penalty box, and the Vegas Golden Knights halfway into the first period, you would have a 5-on-3 penalty situation for the Vegas Golden Knights. And on that power play opportunity, the Vegas Golden Knights would capitalize on it as one of the best power play units we have seen in the NHL so far this season, as Pavel Dorofeyev would score on the power play, and a really good job by him. And you really got to see not just the power play unit, but really the second line in this game with Hertl, Dorofeyev, and Howden. They were productive all night long against the Seattle Kraken. You saw some good line changes, some rushes on the offensive zone, then getting back into the neutral zone, then back into the defensive on that second line. And Pavel Dorofeyev scoring on the power play for the Vegas Golden Knights. And then on the first line, you would have a Nicholas Waugh goal. So back on the first line this season, and he would score there. And it would create a 2-0 game for the Vegas Golden Knights. But more importantly, you would have 2 points for Jack Eichel, 2 assists, first on that power play goal by Dorofeyev, and then the goal by Nicholas Waugh. And then later on in the third period, when the Vegas Golden Knights would score their third goal of the game, you know who you'd have alongside there? Of course, that would be Jack Eichel, who would have a 3-assist game on the night for the Seattle Kraken versus Vegas Golden Knights game. And just really showing the MVP pace that we're seeing so far. And obviously, it's still early, way too soon to have an MVP conversation, but he is performing at a pace that an MVP would be doing. So Jack Eichel, incredible job so far in the first 14 games of the season. And after a Seattle Kraken goal by Brandon Tanev, it would be a 2-1 game after the first period by the Vegas Golden Knights. So strong start in the first, that power play goal by Pavel. And then you had, like I said, a really good momentum on that first line. Your top six was impactful all night long, where the first period really showed it. And it was a 2-1 situation at the end of period number 1 for Vegas. The second period, unfortunately, would be a bit of a dominance for Seattle. They really took control in the second period. Not only would there be a second goal by Brandon Tanev in this game and make it a tie 2-2 game at the end of the second period, but the really only mistake Seattle had in the second was a Brandon Montour high sticking penalty on Noah Hannafin. That would create a power play opportunity by Vegas. And even though Tomas Hertl did try to get an opportunity in, it just did not connect. And the Vegas Golden Knights stayed at 2-2 in the second period. So moving over into the third and what was supposed to be the final period between Vegas and Seattle, that is where some action would pick up in this game. As Oliver Bjorkstrand, he would score and make a 3-2 game for Seattle. That was towards the beginning of the third period. Vegas was starting to kind of try to catch up a little bit. And then a Jaden Schwartz penalty for Seattle would create a window for the Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Eichel almost got a power play goal in this situation, but it just went wide. And then, with a few minutes left in the third period, defenseman Alex Pietrangelo would get it past Joey Daccord and would be a 3-3 tie game for your Vegas Golden Knights. Really solid job by Jack Eichel in this play to set up the Alex Pietrangelo goal and get it past Joey Daccord. And unfortunately, in overtime for the Vegas Golden Knights, you would see some bad defensive play by the Vegas Golden Knights. In fact, you unfortunately saw a breakaway opportunity by Jared McCann. Jared McCann, all by himself, he would deke out Aiden Hill, go to his backhand, and would be the game winner for the Seattle Kraken. So, despite having a 2-1 lead at the beginning of the game, Vegas Golden Knights overcame a 3-2 deficit towards the end of the third period to put it into overtime, but it would be a 4-3 loss for your Vegas Golden Knights. And you know what? You still get a point. You're on the road in Seattle. And bad ending by Vegas. I understand that, you wish you would have gotten a full 2 points instead of just one. But in a full 82-game season, every point matters. Kind of alluded to what we did with Vegas Hockey Hub Recap last year. Every point matters. It all counts. So when you're really sitting there and looking at these recap shows, if you accumulate enough points by the end of the year, that's a huge difference between, being a top seed in the West, being a 2 or 3 seed in the Pacific, and having a wild card spot. So for your Vegas Golden Knights, moving forward, there's going to be a lot of contending teams you're going to have to face in the middle towards the end of November. And then the schedule starts to get a little bit easier around the middle of December and majority of January is when you got to really start facing and competing against some of the lesser good teams in the NHL. And the current win-loss record for the Vegas Golden Knights, of course, 14 games into the season, 9 wins, 3 regulation overtime, 3 regular losses, and 2 overtime losses for the Vegas Golden Knights. So 9, 3, and 2 for your Vegas Golden Knights. That still is one of the best records in the West. Obviously, Minnesota and Winnipeg have had a really strong start to the year, especially Winnipeg. Wow, what an insane run they have had in the first dozen games of the season. But Vegas Golden Knights still the top dog in the Pacific. And really interesting to see what happens for the remainder of November. And when it comes to player of the game, I'm going to be giving it to Jack Eichel. Him having that 3-point performance, that is commendable by him. Strong showing by Alex Pietrangelo on the defensive end. I like what we saw from him tonight. And more importantly, when it came to this game itself, Aiden Hill, he gave up 4 goals, but there was plenty of plays that he did stop and make some momentum saves in this game against Seattle. So, the next game, we're going to cover all of that here on Vegas Hockey Hub. But more importantly, when it comes to this show, we're going to be doing all of our daily stuff. Every single day we upload here on Vegas Hockey Hub on PR Connections Radio. So until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and have a good one, and go Knights. go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.